This did not happen to me, but to one of my good friends. He told me this story when we were sharing scary or unsettling things we've experienced. I believe that is true. He was turning ghost white as he continued telling the story and was close to tears when he finished. For the sake of making the writing easier, I will write it from his perspective. I lived in a small bay town when I was younger, a town small enough to the point where everyone knows each other, and any gossip would be consumed by the town in less than an hour. I had a friend who I will address as Jake, and we did everything together. There wasn't much to do in a small town, so we'd usually play video games all night, and drink if we could find any alcohol. Jake always talked about how he'd hear strange noises in his house at night, especially when he was alone. His house was old, and apparently a murder had happened at that house, and other people died there due to other causes such as illness. Horror stories were common to keep children out of danger in small towns, or just for older kids to scare the young ones. I was 16, and Jake was 17 at the time. We had planned to stay up the entire night playing video games, eating snacks, and drinking some beer. He had recently started talking more and more about odd things about his old house, but I brushed it off as him trying to scare me. Everything was normal when I walked to his house that night. We went into his bedroom, which was on the bottom floor of the house, and started our night. His parents were out that night, so we had the house to ourselves. About an hour in, I left his room to go use the bathroom. The bathroom was up a flight of stairs, which opened to a hallway down the length of the house, with the bathroom being at the end of the hallway, and above it was the ceiling attic hatch. After using the bathroom, I noticed the ceiling hatch was open. I thought it was strange, so I went back to Jake's room and told him. Both of us went back and just stared at it, trying not to show the uneasiness that was tying a knot in our stomachs. We closed it, turned off the upstairs light at the bottom of the staircase, and went back to his room. An hour and a half later, Jake had to use the bathroom. Before leaving the room, he busted a joke about how the hatch was going to be open again, and as a joke in return, I said I'd walk upstairs with him to investigate. We turned the corner that led to the staircase, and the hair stood on our necks as we saw the light shining down from upstairs. We looked up the stairs, seeing the wide open attic hatch. We slowly approached it, quickly closed it, and ran down the stairs as fast as we could to Jake's room, slamming the door shut and locking it. Neither of us had the stomach or bravery to hide our fear at that point. We were so paranoid that we slept in the same bed. We didn't hear any noises as we tried to sleep, but eventually I managed to drift off. Falling asleep, I woke and found myself in a dream. The world was black and white. I realized I was in Jake's room, and it felt so realistic that I did not even notice I was dreaming at first. I got up from the bed, and something drove my body over to the window. Between two hedges, which had previously not been there, a lady in a wedding dress stood below an arch that was overgrown with dead vines. She turned around and saw me, and started to smile. At first it was not too creepy, but then her smile started getting wider and wider, until it reached both of her ears. A ring filled my ears, and she started laughing. Something started scratching at the door that was to my back. But no matter how hard I tried, my eyes were locked on the lady in the dress. I could not move, and was paralyzed with fear. At that moment I woke up, but I was on the couch in Jake's room and not his bed. His eyes were wide open when he saw I was awake, and asked if I was up any time during the night. Confused, I told him no. He then told me that in the middle of the night, I got out of bed and stared out of the window with a wide grin on my face. He explained that after that, I left the room, and he heard a large thump. Then I came back into the room and fell asleep on the couch. Once we cleaned up and left his room, our curiosity bested us, and we decided to look up the stairs, only to see that the light was on, and the attic hatch was wide open. At the time of the sleepover, it was me and my best friend, both aged 7 or 8. We are both now 16 and 17, and haven't talked about this incident since. We lived in Florida, about 15 minutes away from Tampa. It was one of our many sleepovers we had, and it was no different from others. We played with Barbies, watched movies, read books, until we couldn't anymore, and went to bed around 9 or 10. I turned off the lights and climbed up to my top bunk where me and my friend were going to sleep. As I laid down, something immediately didn't feel right. The house I lived in was relatively old, and our landlord sucked and never came to fix anything, let alone did he only care when our rent was due. Before getting in bed, I flipped on my fan and had my mom turn the AC down. But as I got in bed, my fan was turned off, so was the AC. But I thought the power went out and didn't think much about it. About 20 minutes go by and I can't sleep, and I feel like I'm dying of heat stroke. I'm not sure if my friend is awake, so I say her name quietly. She responds immediately, saying I can't sleep, but it's not because it's hot. I look over and can barely see her but her silhouette. I look up at the ceiling and sigh, and say, "What is it then?" She responds saying, "It's the man in the corner." When I say I got chills, I got chills. I look over at her slowly, and turn my head to look at the corner. I thought she was lying, because I didn't see anything. I let out a breath of air I didn't know I was holding in. I go to adjust my blanket, and that's when I see him. A man, dark and tall, seeming to stare at both of us. I immediately grip my friend's hand and close my eyes hard. "We have to get my mom," I whispered, and I felt my friend nod, but we both laid there, unable to move. All of a sudden, I feel the movement of someone climbing up the ladder and crawling slowly. The blankets moved with movement, and I slowly opened my eyes to watch the man slowly starting to crawl towards us. I was gasping for air and looked over to see my friend watching too, paralyzed from moving. I look back at the man and can only see his outline, no features. I hold my friend's hand tight and say, "Scream when I tap your finger." I barely got out in a whisper. She slowly nodded, and as I watched the man slowly reach for my face, I tapped her hand and we both screamed bloody murder. My mom came running in, no later than 20 seconds, and turned on the light, and both me and my friend were holding each other crying. There was no trace of the man. My mom checked all the doors, saying they were locked and weren't even touched. We both slept on the couch that night, watching Barbie movies and holding each other tightly. To this day, I don't know what it was, or who it was, but I will always remember the eerie feeling of death being close to my face.